Donald Trump has paused tariffs on Mexico just days after signing them into effect. Live to US correspondent Jonathan Kersley, who's at the White House this morning. Jono, the president claims countries are dying to make a deal with him.
Well, he does. Mexico, Canada and China have all faced tariffs from the US president announced just 2 days ago. But 48 hours on, well, Donald Trump has backed down, from Mexico at least anyway. He had imposed 25% taxes on imports, but says he spoke with Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum earlier today and backed away from that, saying that she was going to be sending 10,000 Mexican troops to the border. Donald Trump says that this trade dispute is all about a drug war, trying to stop fentanyl coming into the country. He's due to speak with Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau again in the next half an hour. No sign he's moving there. He claims that Canada is treating the United States unfairly when it comes to things like access to banks and also car imports as well. But he's also a very keen watcher of the US stock markets, as we well know. And this, the first day of full financial trading since those measures were announced. Well, Wall Street fell, and it fell hard. Speaking from the Oval Office a short time ago, the president was asked if he blinked with Mexico. This is his response.
Did you blink this morning?
There was no blinking. Every single one of those countries is dying to make a deal. You know why? Because they're ripping us off really badly. And the United States is tired of just being ripped off.
And Donald Trump has not backed away from his threats against the European Union. He says that there are more people on his trade war threat list.
OK, Jono Kersley at the White House. Thank you.
All right, Treasurer, let's talk tariffs now. And Donald Trump has conceded his tariffs on China, Mexico and Canada could indeed hurt the US economy. Has he been a bit knee-jerk here, do you think?
Oh, I'm not going to make that sort of commentary. You know, these are big developments out of the US, but they're not a big surprise. You know, they were flagged in one way or another in the American election campaign. We won't be immune from trade tensions around the world, but we're confident that we can navigate these new policies out of the US. We're well placed, we're well prepared, and we've got a different kind of economic relationship with the US than some of these other countries that are being targeted.
OK, so how do you navigate through that, right? I mean, he's struck a deal with Mexico, putting tariffs there on hold for a month. He's flagged the EU will be next. I mean, if he does come after Australia, will you retaliate? Malcolm Turnbull reckons he had the courage to stand up to Trump. Do you?
Oh, we hope it won't come to that. You know, the work that we're doing is to point out to American colleagues and counterparts in the new administration that our relationship, our economic relationship, is different to those other countries. You know, for example, America runs a trade surplus with Australia, runs a trade deficit with some of those other countries. Ours is an economic relationship of mutual benefit, and all of the work that we do, all of the discussions that we have with American counterparts will be about making sure that any changes in the global economy and coming out of DC are mutually beneficial. Is
he going to listen, though, Treasurer? This is the problem. I mean, the New South Wales Premier is saying that there could likely, and more than likely, will be job losses here in Australia as a result of what's happening in China, because they're just going to start dumping cheap products here instead.
Well, already the slowdown in the Chinese economy is playing out in the Australian economy, and that's because we're quite trade exposed, not just to China, but we are an economy that relies very heavily on global trade. That's why we won't be immune from these sorts of developments. But again, you know, we're confident that we can navigate these changes out of the US. We are well placed and well prepared. We do have a different economic relationship, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of global economic uncertainty which will impact us here in different ways.
And just very quickly, obviously, the Deputy PM heading over to DC shortly this week. He's got a big task ahead of him. Tariffs aside, we're looking at security and defence. That's also important.
Yeah, I think the fact that Penny Wong's already met with her counterpart, Richard Marles is about to meet his counterpart, I think that augurs well for the relationship. It's a brand new administration and already welcoming Australian input and Australian conversations about these really important issues. I've also got an ask in to speak again with my counterpart Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. I think all of these conversations augur well for our ability to navigate new policies out of the US and what it means for global trade more broadly.
Yeah, you got a lot on your plate ahead of a federal election, Treasurer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Well, more now on the fallout of Donald Trump's tariffs, which are already causing chaos on the markets. To break it all down, we are joined by CNN international business correspondent Richard Quest in New York. I love hearing from this man. Richard, hello. How are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I was listening to the Treasurer very carefully because to a certain extent Australia... I know you haven't even asked me a question.
I want your thoughts though, Richard.
Australia... Well, Australia's in a rather enviable position because it does have a trade surplus.
Yes.
The investment account is slightly different. But and there's the AUKUS agreement. So I think that providing the government plays its cards cannily and carefully, and it sounds like the Treasurer's doing that, then they should avoid this. You won't avoid China redirecting cheap goods. I mean, the EU's going to have the same problem. The UK's going to have the same problem. If the US won't take them, the Chinese will try and dump those goods somewhere else. And I suspect Australia will be prime location.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it, Richard? We're kind of having to sit back here in Australia and just see how all the cards fall, because for us, it's really about protecting what we have here, but also that AUKUS deal that you mentioned, surely that protects us a little bit. I guess the global implications are, though, that there's been some blowback, right? Following his tariffs on Canada, China and Mexico, the shares were down. Trump even himself has conceded that Americans will feel some pain here.
Yeah, except now we're in the realms. Look, the rule has always been, look at what he does, not what he says.
Yeah.
Barks worse than his bite, and all those sort of things. Now, from the first few days of the administration, we were told that these tariffs threats were not transactional. It wasn't a negotiating ploy. It was genuine and real, and they would only be taken away after they'd seen real progress. Well, guess what? The Mexican president offered 10,000 troops. It was clearly transactional.
Yeah.
I think Canada could be very different. There's almost an animus between Trump and Canada, Trudeau. It's as if Trump wants to go after Canada. So we'll find out this afternoon whether that's true. And the same for the EU. Donald Trump does not like the EU. So he might give the UK a bit of a deal and he'll go for the EU. Nobody knows. Look, I can't say this often enough. We just don't know. We don't know how to play this game because you're dealing with somebody who has a price for his results and you don't know what that price is.
Richard, I thought you might have the answer to that. I thought with all your experience and all your expertise that you would know how to handle Trump.
The only thing one can say is I think you forget your geopolitical strategists. I would say you want your gamers.
Okay.
Those people who actually know how to play a game, who really have a thought about game theory. Because he comes along and he says, tariffs by Monday night. No negotiation. This is not about negotiation. This is about actually tariffing till we see fentanyl reduced, immigration reduced. And then on Monday he has a phone call and it's off for 30 days. My gut feeling is that the Mexican president said, all right, what have I got that we're going to be able to offer him? Go on, what have I got? All right, let's offer this 10,000 troops.
Yeah.
This was as transactional as it gets.
Yeah, he loves to cut a deal. Richard, could talk to you for hours. Always so wonderful to get your insight. Thank you so much for joining us here in Australia.
I love it when Questy leans into his microphone and whispers something and then he gives us all of his energy at once. What a magnificent man he is.
He is. Look at him.